Well, onwards to the next crystal, but first, let's explore the town just outside of the castle. Not that we have the money to buy much, but we may as well see what's for sale around here. Okay, so the equipment here isn't as expensive or as good as the mithril stuff we found last time. I suppose that's understandable, but still kind of annoying. Why the hell would we want a wooden hammer? Especially since Sid starts off with one. Forests, springs, and a mystical item that holds the power of a major element. I wonder what makes grabbing this crystal too troublesome for Golbez to gain the same way he gained the rest. It's not like the game wants to treat Golbez losing the nation of Baron as a major loss, despite that being something that was talked up quite a bit as a world power before we finally infiltrated the castle, and now is just kind of forgotten about. Wasn't expecting to get a store screen by talking to a random person in the pub. I'm also not too sure what the benefits are to buying that members writ thing in this game, other than just the bragging rights of having that much money to burn when you come to this particular town. Then I'm sure you'll have a low opinion of heaven, sir. Not that this town seems in any way terrible, just kind of generic to me, but then it's not like we're supposed to be here for an extended period of time. Maybe the town is better for people who decide to stay here than for people who are on their way to other stops, and probably for people who are very willing to sleep around. It's hard to say, really, considering the format of the game. I know the main character might seem a bit effeminate, but considering most of the girls working here are in bathing suits, I'd have thought you'd have noticed the spiky armor. Not that it would really make much of a difference if Cecile was a man or a woman in this story. His only real character interactions are, I am friends with Cain and Sid, I feel guilty for what happened to Rydia, and I love Rosa. That might have gotten a tad awkward with the romance triangle going on, but that's pretty thinly written as far as I can tell. And considering how the game tried to remove some of the references to drinking alcohol earlier in the game, there's not much stopping them from censoring a less conventional relationship on top of that. Hell, this game isn't doing much of anything to censor the idea that this tavern has a bunch of prostitutes in it. I suppose the localizers didn't think that the younger members of the audience would even know what goes on with scantily clad women in a place like this, or why we're supposed to be creeped out by an old woman saying she'll take care of us. Anyway, that should about do it for this building. Let's see what else is in town. At the very least, the place feels pretty relaxed considering where we are in terms of the story at this point. Again, the bad guys have 3 out of the 4 crystals, and our current quest is to help them gain the 4th in exchange for Rosa. A deal they are very unlikely to honor, but it's not like we can tell our team not to do it. So while we've got a fully clothed woman sunbathing and naming wave frolicking in the water there, the world is slowly moving closer to disaster. Well, that's a good number of chocobos. I'm kind of confused. None of them are yellow, though. And clearly, you've been breeding them to the point where there are no other colors of chocobo out here. Wait, so the distinctive thing about black chocobos is that they can fly, but the ones you've specifically bred here are not able to? I'm sorry, but I'm not sure you're as good at breeding the specialized ostriches as you think you are. Not that I ever really go for any kind of breeding mechanic in any game that has it. typically get a little squeaked out by it, really. Okay, so we're not able to interact with Namingway from up here, which implies there's a way to get down to the water with him. Now, how the hell do we get over there? Definitely a very idyllic town. We're already in the water. What more do you want, lady? Though at least her friend was willing to acknowledge that we're wearing armor in here, which is a bit awkward. Not that our clothes or armor give a damn what environment we're in. Especially in a game this old, it's all pretty cosmetic. I'm sure that would be nice, but who would we want to talk to with such a thing at the moment? It's not like anyone in this crew is trying to coordinate some kind of global resistance movement against Golbez as he tries to mess with the magical center of the world here. Right. I'm pretty sure we found everything worth finding in the village. Time to move on towards the castle. I'm sorry, is that old man supposed to be trying to perv on the women who aren't even trying to hide that they're swimming and having fun in the water? I'm sorry, but it's hard to come across as a solid pervert when you're seeing this kind of sprite work. Frogs in the castle's moat. I don't suppose those frogs would be willing to fight to defend the castle if it was attacked, would they? A Damsian prince, huh? Guess that makes another survivor of the annoying shipwreck from earlier in the game. I'd prefer to get some news about Rydia rather than Edward, but then it's not like I've got anything really against Edward. If anything, I feel sorry for the guy since he lost his home, his family, his fiancée, got beat down by his father-in-law, and just does not seem to be physically built for the kind of adventure we need to go through to save this particular world. Oh, no. Stay in bed, my good man. Try to find some other way to help us that doesn't involve going on the front lines, and you should be good for the rest of this journey. You shouldn't have to. Just mourn and try to find a way to keep on living instead of trying to be something you're not, and you are most definitely not a frontline warrior. Rydia has yet to make her reappearance, but until we confirm a corpse, I'm not gonna say she's 100% dead. I'm just gonna continue to be annoyed that the best character in the game isn't with us for a good chunk of the game. It also means that Baron is effectively out of the war. Golbez's resources are now down to whatever he can manage to pull out of his ass. Though I'm sure that's going to be quite extensive. His armor certainly does make him look pretty bulky. Wait, when did we hear that it's in the hands of a dark elf? Were we meant to have this conversation after some other conversation in the castle? Because it feels like the characters at the moment know more than I do when I pay pretty good attention. Huh. We were told about the Whisperweed before we came to the castle at all. I suppose that somehow makes it a plot-critical item. I honestly don't care which of you is the doctor or the nurse. I just want you two to make sure he recovers. Even if I don't want him back in the party, I care enough about him that I want him to make it to the credits. He certainly felt more endearing to me with his bits earlier than the game than the two twins did. Okay. Odd to note that this nation has never seen war and still has visibly more warriors than the monk-centric kingdom of Habul. Can't really find it in me to care that the soldiers are women around here, since again, it's not like the sprites let us see all that much detail from people. Guess we'll be coming back to this section of the castle later then. The pervy part of my mind can't help thinking they kept this section of the castle looking like a dungeon for some, shall we say, interesting games. The other just can't help feeling annoyed that a place that's supposed to be this peaceful is something we run into when the story wants us to believe that we're getting closer and closer to something worthy of making us despair. The tension in the story should be mounting about now, especially since we took 2 casualties just to get this far. But is it really right to complain about that kind of storytelling detail when the game is this damn old and most video game stories had far more basic stories than this? The game designers did everything they could to make this one feel special, and it most certainly had an impact when it first released. But still, just because I fully respect how this game helped change the landscape of role-player games in general, just like the original Final Fantasy, I'm gonna keep calling things the way I see it, and some of these things just have not aged well. If you're a guard, then dress like all the other guards and put on some bloody armor. Wait, you're calling that dancing dress armor? Well, that's a good sign that this nation has never actually gone to war before. The elite guards, meant to protect their heads of state, are dressed for form, not function around here. You still have soldiers. Why not send those soldiers to retrieve the crystal if some dark elf managed to take it from you? And why the hell is this place still so idyllic when the mystical item that's responsible for making their land so nice has been stolen? Wait. Equipping metal items is a bad thing in the next dungeon. What the hell? Okay, so this Dark Elf was certainly clever when he picked where to hide after stealing the major item. But hey, I would have liked it if it was implied the scantily clad women were preparing to try to go after the Dark Elf themselves instead of just standing there. That would have made it more forgivable that they're visibly not wearing any armor when every other guard in the place is. And I'm sure I'm gonna end up regretting buying any of those mithril weapons in the previous clip. This feels like another of those rather cheap ways to make the game feel more difficult. Just setting up little traps that a first-time player wouldn't know to avoid and can easily catch a player who's been away from the game for a long time might not remember. Ah well, let's do some emergency equipment changes before leaving town. Not sure how much more equipment shifting I'm gonna be able to do with the money we've got right now. Or how that magnetic cave is really gonna work, considering some of the other environments we've dealt with over the course of Final Fantasy 1 and 4 so far. Just very counterintuitive that I'm thinking of replacing all our equipment with stuff that is measurably worse. At least the way the store screen measures things. And I don't think they ever do anything like this ever again in the later games. Hell, I'm pretty sure the magnetic cave is one of the main reasons I might stall out when trying to record the 3D remake of this game. Dear God, let's at least wait until we're in the cave itself before we start openly downgrading our equipment that far. Huh. Okay, I have no clue what an Etten snake is. It seems to be some variety of hydra, two-headed and all that. I certainly like the coloration of it, that's for sure. I'm not really seeing anything online about it being some mythical beast, though. Just that it's an enemy type in Final Fantasy IV, and that Octopath Traveler uses the same name for a similar-looking two-headed snake. Anyway, this is about the point in the game where the constant counterattacks is going to really do quite a job of exhausting us as we keep trying to push forward. And good God, it's even more annoying since the counterattacks don't even go after the guy who threw the attack that's being countered. Here's hoping that our supplies last long enough for us to get through this dungeon. Again, I have not been doing all that much to buy fresh healing supplies in this game, and I'm pretty sure that might be a pretty major mistake, especially this far in. But so far, we have not paid for it yet. More needle hogs. I'm pretty sure those are going to be the most annoying enemies to deal with out here. As a side note, I probably should have put Sid on the front line so his hammer would do more damage per hit, but then he's still hitting pretty hard despite being on the back line, so... Whew. Now it's down to the cursed trees. At least they aren't countering our strikes all that much. Really? Trying to stop a guy who's already been stopped? Considering I had auto-paddle on for that fight, I was expecting the enemy to be fighting more intelligently than I was, but We're certainly burning through MP in a hurry before we've even made it to the dungeon. That's not a good sign, especially since we've only got one person on the team who can be a white mage. And since I've got him using nearly constant healing magic, that's not going to leave us a lot of magic left for offensive spells if I feel the need to. But then, I'm not really a magic-oriented person in general. I'd probably be the sort of jackass who would bring an enchanted typewriter instead of a wand to Hogwarts. It's not that I don't have the imagination to use magic whatsoever, just that all too often I think, why bother using this spell or that one when a more mundane solution will do? Seriously, why magically strike a hostile with the magical fist of Zeus, when you can beat him over the head with an encyclopedia? And it's not even like the magic in Final Fantasy goes for any form of imagination. It's just buff, debuff, healing, and offensive spells. And considering how status-affecting spells generally go when the player tries to use them in this series, those two forms of magic aren't all that helpful for most of the game. So I typically just use magic, or at least healing magic around here, and only use offensive magic when facing off against a boss that has a good amount of health. And this is most definitely not a boss fight, it's a bunch of common enemies out in an open field. A pretty normal random encounter for this part of the world. If we're having trouble against this group, that's not a good sign for how we might do against the next boss. But then this is the kind of game where the random encounters are designed in such a way that sometimes they feel more grueling than the bosses at the end of a given dungeon. Maybe this is gonna feel like another case of that when we finally get to the Dark Elf in the Magnetic Cave. Hard to really say that before we actually enter the Magnetic Cave, though. It might be positively grueling due to our equipment restrictions. And dear God, I need to pull back, and we haven't even seen the cave we're supposed to go to yet. Definitely getting the distinct feeling I'm nowhere near prepared enough for what's coming next. not sure if Cait Sith is more dangerous than the snake we saw earlier in the clip. I just know that name is gonna come back to us when I finally get around to working on Final Fantasy VII. Bloody hell, do I wish the PSP version had an in-game map we could open. Sure, looking at an online map means I have some idea where we are, but I'm not incredibly precise when trying to read those, apparently. And I'm getting the distinct feeling that this game requires a certain level of precision with your decisions that wasn't needed back in Final Fantasy I. I look forward to seeing if Final Fantasy V ends up feeling easier or harder to me than this one does. But first we've got to get there. And this game still has a good amount of footage left for us to work through. I'm also not too sure if I'll go straight to Final Fantasy V when I'm done with this one, or if I'll do some other games in between them. Well, at the very least, the team certainly needs a rest at the inn, that's for sure. We certainly got more than enough money to stay here. Considering how many beds are in the inn, I'm kind of disappointed we don't see everyone splitting off to get to a bed like we would have back in the first Final Fantasy. It was always a bit of a minor detail, but I liked it for what it was worth. And I hope that detail didn't stop being a thing in the series from 4 onwards. Oh dear God, I'm getting worn down and I'm grabbing equipment that's gonna make us less capable of taking a hit. This is definitely not gonna make much sense. Well, I'm not seeing any wooden swords, so I don't think Cecile is going to have a good time in the magnetic cave, regardless of how much I try to prepare him. At least not in this town. Do I have to go to some other town for a weapon I can use in that gimmicked dungeon we need to worry about? Regardless, I'm definitely gonna have to find a stopping point for this clip soon. It's certainly got a healthy length at this point, that's for sure. Certainly plenty of trees out here, so I'm surprised that we don't see any traditional elves with a village out here. We just have one lone dark elf that decided to steal from the only bit of civilization out here, and no other towns or villages to be seen. Okay, that's certainly an ominous-looking set of towers just coming out of a void of darkness in the middle of, a bunch of mountains. I'm sure that'll be important later, but for now, we have other things to worry about, like trying to prepare for an annoying gimmick in a dungeon we haven't found yet. A gimmick that loses any and all real impact in the Pixel Remaster, since there's a convenient little button to turn off random encounters however long you please, so we would have so much less trouble going through there. Again, I get why the Pixel Remaster did that, and I get why some other Final Fantasies have that option in the PC releases, but with the odd exception of Final Fantasy VIII, the series really generally expects you to go through a lot of random encounters every step of the way. It's your main source of income to buy various items. It's how you level up your characters. Turning off random encounters just feels like you're undermining your own chance to grow. Though I suppose it can be just as easy for you to end up over-prepared if you grind or something, and it's not like I can say in any game that I know when I'm over or under-prepared or over or under-leveled until I'm right there in the thick of it. is one of the issues with being very experienced in a wide range of games. You end up forgetting some of the bits and details of some games, or throw yourself off expecting things to work a certain way because you experienced that something in a different game. And when there's a good number of games that you shift around between, you have to go through at least a little of the learning process for each individual game all over again. Which is one of the things that makes the cheaper design choices in this game feel all the more annoying to me, since I ended up forgetting about them. Yeah, still not seeing any weapon I'd be all that willing to trade Cecile's current sword for. He's definitely gonna be screwed over hard when we finally get to the magnetic cave. Though that will have to wait until next time. For now, I'll just have to hope I've prepared enough for the bullshit that's gonna come our way.